Hello and welcome. Welcome to session number 157 of Kevin Reads A Course in Miracles. We are still in chapter 19. We're finishing it up today. All right, chapter 19 is called the Attainment of Peace. Very important concept in our lives. We are in section 4, i.The, called the Obstacles to Peace. And in that section, we are in subsection D, entitled The Fourth Obstacle, the Fear of God. All righty. So, let's jump into it. What would you see without the fear of death? What would you feel and think if death held no attraction for you? Very simply, you would remember your Father, the creator of life, the source of everything that lives, the Father of the universe and of the universe of universes, and of everything that lies even beyond them, would you remember. And as this memory rises in your mind, peace must still surmount a final obstacle, after which is salvation completed, and the Son of God entirely restored to sanity. For here your world does end. Alrighty. So, what he means by what would you see without the fear of death? The ego thought system counsels us that, first it says, we killed God, and then it says God's still alive and he's coming to get you. All right? So we become afraid that God is going to kill us. All right? So what would you see without the fear of death? All right, if you weren't afraid of being obliterated, he says very simply, you would remember your Father. And then he just poetically tries to use words to describe that experience. All right? The creator of life, the source of everything that lives. All right? Remember, he's not talking about, birds and flowers and rabbits and people, things like that. He's talking about the entity, all right, his creation in heaven. All right. The Father of the universe and the universe of universes. All right, that trying to express some kind of spaciousness, all right, in which we exist, all right, as a living thought. And everything that lies even beyond them would you remember. And he says, and as this memory rises in your mind, right, as we get closer to peace and seeing correctly, right, and peace of mind is growing, right, as this memory rises, peace must still surmount a final obstacle. It says, after which salvation is completed. Your freedom from this ego thought system is completed. But there's one final obstacle. Right? And the Son of God will be entirely restored to sanity. For here your world does end. Right? Paragraph 2. The fourth obstacle to be surmounted hangs like a heavy veil before the face of Christ. Yet as his face rises beyond it, shining with joy because he is in his Father's love, peace will lightly brush the veil aside and run to meet him and to join with him at last. For this dark veil, which seems to make the face of Christ himself like to a leper's, and the bright rays of his Father's love that light his face with glory appear as streams of blood, fades in a blazing light beyond it, when the fear of death is gone. Right? The fourth obstacle, this fear of being obliterated by God. Right? He says it hangs like a heavy veil before the face of Christ. Right? Now this face of Christ is mentioned many places in the Course. Think of it as the realization of innocence. Right? The realization of complete innocence. Right? Complete and shining and wonderful innocence. That's the face of Christ. Right? I'm not talking about a physical face. Right? You are the Christ. You are the offspring of the Father. You were created and still are innocent. You are always in that state, dreaming that you're something else. Right? So, he says this fourth obstacle, this fear that God's going to kill me, this fear of God, it hangs like a heavy veil, right? And it makes the face of Christ, the awareness, becoming aware of your own innocence, it makes it as if you're going to hang out with lepers. It makes it very frightening, makes it look like it's a face full of blood. You're going to have to suffer. Oh my God. Right? But that's not the way it is, okay? Paragraph 3. This is the darkest veil, upheld by the belief in death and protected by its attraction. The dedication to death and to its sovereignty is but the solemn vow, the promise made in secret to the ego never to lift this veil, not to approach it, nor even to suspect that it is there. This is the secret bargain made with the ego to keep what lies beyond the veil forever blotted out and unremembered. Here is your promise never to allow union to call you out of separation. The great amnesia in which the memory of God seems quite forgotten. The cleavage of yourself from you. The fear of God, the final step in your dissociation. Okay, he says you made a promise to the ego. Right, we dedicated ourselves to death. Right, once we take on the ego's costume, so to speak, we become this, and eventually it dies. Right. So he says we chose to believe. We've chosen to let this veil drop. Right, we dissociated from who we are. He said that you've cleaved yourself, your higher self, from you. This is the cleavage of yourself from you. And when that you is there, it's the decision-making part of the mind. All right? Not me as Kevin. We're trying to free me as Kevin. We're trying to get back to the decision maker, to where I can choose against this ego thought system and allow the memory of God to rise up in my mind. The memory of who I am. All right? He said it's the great amnesia once we dedicated ourselves to the belief in separation, which is the belief in death. All right? No life outside of heaven. Okay? As Jesus would say. All right? He said it was a promise made in secret to the ego never to lift this veil, right? Never to try to look upon the face of Christ, the innocence, your own innocence, right? Your brother's innocence. Right? That's what our brother is there for, that we may look past his ego shenanigans and see the innocence. We're willing to see the innocence. We don't make up what the innocence looks like. We are willing to be shown the innocence. Right? We have to resign ourselves to not knowing, okay? Just to being shown. All right? Let your inner teacher show you the innocence of the other. And your own innocence will immediately arise in your mind, in your awareness. Right? And we will be lifting the veil. All right, he says, and it's the darkest veil. It's upheld by the belief in death, by the belief in separation. Okay? He says, we promised the ego we'd never look at it. Don't look. All right? And if you look at the myths and the legends and, all the stories and the mythologies that we get brought up with that are in our cultures, many different cultures have, mythologies and stories that come up through the ages with their people and their culture. And a lot of them are around the idea of don't look. Don't look back. Don't look back. Lot's wife. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's Lot or Lot. It's always cool to say Lot. Lot's wife. She was told not to look back at the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And she turned around and she looked. Oh, she turned to stone. Don't look. All right? Don't look at the face of this one. Don't look at that. Climbing up the stairs out of Hades. Don't look back. Don't look back. You're going to lose your girlfriend. All right. And these myths, they represent part of the psyche of the human being. There's a lot of stuff that comes up. Says don't look. Right? And we promised the ego we'd never look. So he goes, that's like an amnesia that fell upon us. Right? That veil of forgetfulness. Okay? The minute we had dedicated ourselves to separation. Right? Here is your promise, never to allow union to call you out of separation. So we made a promise to the ego never to let union, right, our union with our Father and with everyone else. He says, don't let that call you out of the separation. Don't let it get you. All right. The great amnesia in which the memory of God seems quite forgotten. The cleavage of yourself from you. Cleavage of yourself, your true self, from that decision-making part of your mind. All right? The fear of God, the final step in your dissociation. Right? We dissociate, we turn our back, and we forget where we came from. That's part of dissociation. You forget what you dissociated from. So the memory of God is forgotten. Okay? Paragraph 4. See how the belief in death would seem to save you. For if this were gone, what could you fear but life? It is the attraction of death that makes life seem to be ugly, cruel, and tyrannical. You are no more afraid of death than of the ego. These are your chosen friends. For in your secret alliance with them, you have agreed never to let the fear of God be lifted. so you could look upon the face of Christ and join him in his Father. All right? So the suffering of life becomes purposive. All right? I want to prove that I did it, I separated. And I'm real, and it's not my fault. All right? It's the attraction of death, that idea of separation, that makes life seems to be ugly, cruel, and tyrannical. All right? So the difficult life is purposive. I'm here, but it's not my fault. Okay? And he says, these are your trusted friends. These are your chosen friends. Right? The separation and sin, guilt, and fear, your chosen friends. Right? And the suffering. Right? It says, for in your secret alliance with them, you have agreed never to let the fear of God be lifted. Right? So we've made this bargain with the ego to always be afraid of God. All right? To always, take the ego's lesson that God's going to get you. All right? Look out, kid, it's something you did. God knows when, but you're doing it again. All right? 20 years of schooling and they put you on a day shift, as the man said. So life, the purpose of life is to be difficult at least. All right? And he says, so you agreed never to let the fear of God be lifted, so you could look upon the face of Christ and join him in his Father. So you don't want to lift that fear of God so you can see and become aware of the innocence and the fact that there is no sin. There is only innocence. All right? And you can join your Creator in everlasting bliss. Paragraph 5. Every obstacle that peace must flow across is surmounted in just the same way. The fear that raised it yields to the love beyond, and so the fear is gone. And so it is with this. The desire to get rid of peace and drive the Holy Spirit from you fades in the presence of the quiet recognition that you love him. Right? So it reiterates the first obstacle. Right? The exaltation of the body, the second obstacle. The exaltation of the body is given up in favor of the spirit, which you love as you could never love the body. And the appeal of death is lost forever as love's attraction stirs and calls to you. From beyond each of the obstacles to love, love itself has called, and each has been surmounted by the power of the attraction of what lies beyond it. Your wanting fear seemed to be holding them in place, yet when you heard the voice of love beyond them, you answered, and they disappeared. Okay? If you are drawn to realizing truth in any form, right? As they say, the truth is one. Sages know it by many names. So there have been many sages throughout the years, the eons. There have been many, many teachers, master teachers, all right, that have remained with us to point us in the right direction, to give us the guidance, right? To remind us that love is calling from beyond these obstacles. All right? Love calls beyond the obstacle of the desire to get rid of peace. And love is stronger than that desire. Right? And you that have been on a path, right, take heart that love is stronger than all these obstacles and will eventually overcome them. And peace will rise up in your awareness, and you will no longer be afraid to confront your Creator, right? And to hear that song, that loving greeting, right? However you want to put it, right? And it will happen. We are the ones that delay. You know, we're the ones that, you know, like little kids, we run up to the wave in the ocean, and when the wave is coming to the shore, we run away from it. All right? And that's just the human condition. All right? Learn to observe it, not judge it, and desire to see the correction. All right? And you'll get there sooner than later. Because once the journey has begun, right, the end is inevitable. Right? The goal is inevitable. You will remember God. You will remember your loving Creator. And it will not be a cause of fear. Right? This is... All these things are overcome by love. Each has been surmounted by the power of attraction of what lies beyond it. You are actually attracted to love. Love is what you are. And love is attracted to itself. And you will realize it. Just become an observer of yourself, right? Without judgment. That's the key. Do not judge yourself. Right? And if you're observing yourself doing something detrimental to yourself, you know, it might be a good idea to stop doing that. And I'm not saying just allow yourself to be a nut, but just observe yourself. And if you're harming yourself, take steps to stop that. It might be a good idea. But we do it without judgment. Right? I can hear Ken in the back of my head saying, just be normal. Be normal. Right? But be normal without judgment. See how that works. All right? Your wanting fear seemed to be holding them in place. Right? Holding all the obstacles to peace in place. Your desire for fear. Right? Because fear comes along with the desire for separation. All right? And it, you know, I think I mentioned it in the last session or something about, you know, death and what happens then and this and that. And something was knocking on my head all through the week. The idea that all time, we're the ones that believe in time. Now here's something to boggle your mind. All time is happening at once. Okay? And we're constantly making the choice for separation or for reconciliation, so to speak, remembering who you are. Right? We're constantly making the choice. Right? So it would behoove us to become observers of ourselves without judgment and notice, oh, look, here's the choice that I made. This is why I'm doing this or saying that or thinking this. Right? And come back to the mind, come back to the right mind and ask for help. in the forms of Jesus and the Holy Spirit is what we use in the Course. Your higher self, which is always with you. Right? They just don't make as much noise as the ego. They wait to be welcomed. Alrighty then. So your wanting fears seem to hold all these obstacles in place. Okay? The desire to get rid of it, the attraction of death, the exaltation of the body, all those things. Okay? Yet when you heard the voice of love beyond them, you answered, and they disappeared. Now, look, Jesus put that in the past tense. When you heard the voice, you answered, and they disappeared. Right? Your true existence is beyond the veil. Right? It's with your Father. Okay? But we're living in the remnants of that decision. And that's what he means by you're actually at home in God, dreaming of exile. Paragraph 6. And now you stand in terror before what you swore never to look upon. Your eyes look down, remembering your promise to your friends, the loveliness of sin, the delicate appeal of guilt, the holy waxen image of death, and the fear of vengeance. The fear of vengeance of the ego you swore in blood not to desert. They all rise up and bid you not to raise your eyes. For you realize that if you look on this and let the veil be lifted, they will be gone forever. All of your friends, your protectors, and your home will vanish. Nothing that you remember now will you remember. I'm remembering Ram Dass says, this is the scary part of the spiritual journey. Right? All of your friends, the sin, guilt, and fear, your protectors, and your home, right, will vanish. That's the scary part. That's the fear of God. Right? Nothing that you remember now will you remember. And when we're getting to the point where that will be okay, all right? That will be okay. You will reach that point with a blissful smile on your face, all right? So, paragraph 7, it seems to you the world will utterly abandon you if you but raise your eyes. Yet all that will occur is you will leave the world forever. This is the reestablishment of your will. Look upon it open-eyed, and you will never more believe that you are at the mercy of things beyond you, forces you cannot control, and thoughts that come to you against your will. It is your will to look on this. No mad desire, no trivial impulse to forget again, no stab of fear, nor the cold sweat of seeming death can stand against your will. For what attracts you from beyond the veil is also deep within you, unseparated from it and completely one. That's what is attracting you from beyond this veil that we allow to drop. Right? This, what we think is such a heavy veil. Right? It's, and we won't look at it because we promised our friends not to look at it. Right? But he says, look upon it open-eyed. Okay? And it's the reestablishment of your will. When you were created with the same will as God, which is to extend all, to extend everything, to extend love. That's your will. That's what you do. All right? And you will remember that. It's calling to you. All right? And if, look, it's like I say, it's in the human condition to be afraid of these words, you know? But just notice. That's all you got to do is just notice. Oh, that's pretty scary. He's talking about leaving this world forever. All right? Leaving this home. Okay? And yeah, there's times when that gets pretty scary. But that's okay. You're not here by yourself. You go into your right mind and just sit with your higher self. Sit with Jesus. Sit with the memory of who you are, the Holy Spirit. All right? They know what you're thinking. They know what you want. And you can tell them, look, I'm kind of scared of this. Can you help me? And they will. They will. They're going to say, okay, no problem. We're going to take this, step by step. All right? Until you just understand everything. All right? So it says, become scared because it seems the world will utterly abandon you if you but raise your eyes and look on this, look and see what's beyond the veil, the innocence. But he says, but look, he says, nothing can stop you. No mad desire, no trivial impulse to forget again, no stab of fear, nor the cold sweat of seeming death can stand against your will. The writing is very cool. For what attracts you from beyond the veil is also deep within you. It's unseparated. You are unseparated from it. You are unseparated from the innocence. The innocence is deep within you. Right? And it is completely one with you. All right? You're no longer separated from yourself. That's what's attracting you from beyond the veil. That's what brings you to even listening to something like this, or listening to other things that you do, other spiritual undertakings, let's put it, So, now we come to another subsection within the subsection, I, lowercase I, entitled The Lifting of the Veil. Excuse me. Forget not that you came this far together, you and your brother, and it was surely not the ego that led you here. No obstacle to peace can be surmounted through its help. It does not open up its secrets and bid you look on them and go beyond them. It would not have you see its weakness. Learn that it has no power to keep you from the truth. The guide who brought you here remains with you. And when you raise your eyes, you will be ready to look on terror with no fear at all. But first, lift up your eyes and look on your brother in innocence, born of complete forgiveness of his illusions, and through the eyes of faith that sees them not. Right? No one can look upon the fear of God unterrified unless he has accepted the atonement and learned illusions are not real. No one can stand before this obstacle alone, for he could not have reached this far unless his brother walked beside him. and no one would dare to look on it without complete forgiveness of his brother in his heart. Stand you here a while, and tremble not. You will be ready. Let us join together in a holy instant, here in this place where the purpose given in a holy instant has led you. And let us join in faith that he who brought us here together will offer you the innocence you need, and that you will accept it for my love and his. All righty then. The lifting of the veil. Right? He says, remember, you didn't get here by yourself. Right? As he says in another place, the ark of peace is entered 2 by 2. Right? We need the other. Right? We need the other insofar as they have the same mind as we have. They're in the same boat that we are in. We have the same needs. We need to be awakened from this dream of death, these illusions. All right. And my brother, the other, is there to show me which teacher I'm using, which guide am I using. Am I looking at my brother, the other person, as so just some kind of a creep, a nasty villain? Someone to be despised? Am I looking at him that way? Well, sooner or later, I have to realize that doesn't make me feel better, right? So I need to ask for help. I'm using the wrong guide. I'm using the ego system as my guide. In order to get rid of that guilt that I chose to come here with, I have to find someone who's evil and just despicable and project it onto them. All right? He says, but just be willing to have your thought system corrected, have your perceptions of the other corrected. Just be willing to be shown. You don't have to know anything. All right? And it will occur to you, right? That innocence will rise up in your mind. Your perception will be corrected. And right along with the other's innocence comes your own. Right? That's the process of forgiveness. You don't want to start the process with an agenda, like what has to be corrected. You just want to be willing to see the innocence in the other. Right? You want to look past. They may continue to act out. You want to look past the acting out and ask, Jesus, help me to understand this. I'm willing to see with corrected perception. Right? So he says that's how you don't get to the final veil by yourself. All right? And remember, he's, as a side note, he's talking to Helen and Bill. All right? Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford. They were using their relationship as, one of the foundations of the book. And he reminds them, look, you didn't get here by yourself. You and your brother got here together. And it was surely not the ego that led you here. Okay? Because the ego's not going to lead you past the obstacles to the final veil. The ego's not going to have it. The ego doesn't want to disappear. All right? And he says, nor can the obstacle to peace be surmounted with its help. Ego's not going to help you get peaceful. All right? It doesn't want you to see its weaknesses. He says, the guide who brought you here remains with you. All right? The memory of who you are, the Holy Spirit, symbolized by Jesus. This is the guide that brought us here. These are the guides that bring us along. He He says they remain with you. Right? They remain with you. All right? And when you raise your eyes, you will be ready to look on terror with no fear at all. Right? When you raise your eyes, you'll be able to look at that final veil and beyond it with no fear. No fear at all, because your guides are with you. Your perceptions have been changed. You have overcome these obstacles to peace. And love is the forgiveness is what overcomes them. Okay? He says, but first, lift up your eyes and look on your brother in innocence, born of complete forgiveness of his illusions, and through the eyes of faith that sees them not. So once again, we go back to that idea of faith. We put our trust in the right mind, in the thought of oneness, right? The memory of who we are, right? And we look at our brother through those eyes, right? So you see your brother in innocence. He says that's what you do first. So forgiveness gets you to the point where you realize your own innocence. And when you realize your own innocence, you're no longer afraid. You're not afraid of anything. You're not afraid of death. All right? Paragraph 9, he goes, no one can look upon the fear of God unterrified unless he has that's sentence number 9, excuse me, in that paragraph 9. Am I confused? Yes. Yes, it is paragraph 9, okay? No one can look upon the fear of God unterrified unless he has accepted the atonement and learned illusions are not real. No one can stand before this obstacle alone, for he could not have reached this far unless his brother walked beside him. And no one would dare to look on it without complete forgiveness of his brother in his heart. Stand you here a while and tremble not. You will be ready. Let us join together in a holy instant. Here in this place where the purpose given in a holy instant has led you, and let us join in faith that he who brought us here together will offer you the innocence you need, and you will accept it for my love and his. Okay. I got lost once again. That's okay. He says you can't look on the love of God unless you've accepted the atonement, the innocence. Right? Unless you've accepted the innocence. There was no, you did not separate, neither did your brother. All right? And you learned that everything, all these illusions are not real. All right? And that's the point you will be at. Right? When your perceptions have been corrected and you're willing to see the other correctly. And he says, no one can stand before this fear of God alone, all right? Because you couldn't have gotten this far unless your brother walked beside you, right? No one would dare to look on it without complete forgiveness, the complete forgiveness of his brother in his heart. We wouldn't dare to look past the veil and see God if we harbored some kind of resentment or hatred or something. So you wouldn't dare to look at it. You have to realize your own innocence. Otherwise, you're always going to be afraid of God. But you are innocent. All right? I mean, in time, in this human passion play that we partake in, yeah, you do things wrong, you make mistakes, you feel bad, you feel guilty, all right? But underneath all that play, that cosplay, as they say, you're innocent. Your true nature is that, all right? Not the part that you chose to play here in this giant Comic-Con of life. So you join together and you come together, all right? And you stand here a while and tremble not, just because you will be ready. You will have all your perceptions changed. There's no illusions. You've accepted. You're willing to accept your brother's innocence and your own. He says, you're ready. All right? So he says, let us join together in a holy instant. Here in this place where the purpose given in a holy instant has led you. So the purpose, the forgiveness, the seeing the other correctly, that purpose was given you in the holy instant, the joining, all right, with the memory of who you are, the joining with Jesus. All right? And let's join in faith that he who brought us here together will offer you the innocence you need. All right? And you will accept it for my love and his. You will accept your own innocence, and you will look upon the face of God without fear. Okay. Paragraph 10. Nor is it possible to look on this too soon. This is the place to which everyone must come when he is ready. Once he has found his brother, he is ready. Yet merely to reach the place is not enough. A journey without a purpose is still meaningless. And even when it is over, it seems to make no sense. How can you know that it is over unless you realize its purpose is accomplished? Here, with the journey's end before you, you see its purpose, and it is here you choose whether to look upon it or wander on, only to return and make the choice again. All right? He's telling us that the moment of salvation always presents itself. Okay? That moment when we're willing to see the other's innocence, we're willing to accept the innocence. That moment is always presenting itself. Okay? He says, because that's what gives the journey its meaning. He says, otherwise it's a meaningless, senseless journey. And he says, and you get to this point, right? And here, with the journey's end before you, you see its purpose. The acceptance of the atonement, the acceptance of the forgiveness, the acceptance of who you are. And it is here you choose. Right? As we said, we're choosing all the time. And that moment of salvation is presenting itself all the time. Right? He says, and then you choose whether to accept it or to wander on. Right? To run away from the wave. Only to return and make the choice again. You come back to make the choice again. All right? So that the choice point is always there. All right. Paragraph 11. To look upon the fear of God does not need some preparation. Only the sane can look on the stark insanity and raving madness with pity and compassion, but not with fear. For only if they share in it does it seem fearful. And you do share in it until you look upon your brother with perfect faith and love and tenderness. Before complete forgiveness, you stand unforgiving. You are afraid of God because you fear your brother. Those you do not forgive, you fear. And no one reaches love with fear beside him. Okay? I think he's just expanding on the idea that that the moment of salvation presents itself all the time. And he says, you can choose to become aware of the innocence, or wander off, only to return again. All right? So he says, then the fear of God, to look upon the fear of God does need some preparation. I might have said it doesn't need it, but it does. That's the ego making me say things like that. To look upon the fear of God does need some preparation. Right? Because only the sane can look on this world of stark insanity. I mean, check it out. I mean, so many people say to me, isn't it getting worse? I said, well, it's always been that way, but you're becoming more aware of it. We have access to more information these days, and visuals and audio. All right? So only the sane can look on the stark insanity and raving madness with pity and compassion. All right? So that takes the preparation of having my perceptions changed, listening to the correct teacher. Right? He says, because only the sane can do that without fear. Right? He says, because only if you share in the insanity, only if you truly believe in this ego thought system, that you're truly here, and I got to do this, and I got to do that, and I got to protect myself, and look how crazy this is. You're going to react this way. And then we're sharing in it. We're sharing in that dream of craziness. He says, then you become fearful. Right? And you do share in it unless you look upon your brother with perfect faith and love and tenderness. Right? So the world is scary, and people are scary, unless we start having our perceptions corrected, unless we can get to the point where we can look on that despicable person that we saw before and look on them with tenderness and compassion. All right? With perfect faith and love and tenderness. All right? Before complete forgiveness, you still stand unforgiving. All right? And if we're unforgiving, you still fear God. He says, you fear what you don't forgive. All right? You are afraid of God because you fear your brother. All right? Those you do not forgive, you fear. And no one reaches love with fear beside him. All right? So we have to prepare to get rid of that unforgiveness, right? And that means we're willing to stop projecting the guilt and be willing to be shown the truth about that person, right? And like I say, that person doesn't have to change anything about themselves. What changes is our perception of them, right? They can be as despicable as they want, but we will be able to look on them with a tenderness and an understanding. Okay? Wouldn't that be nice? And then you're not afraid. You're just not afraid. All right? You look on a little baby with tenderness. You're not afraid of a little baby. You look on your pets with tenderness. Right? You're not afraid of them. But the guy walking down the street, I look at him and I start judging right away. He might be a threat to me. Right? Depends on my perception. Right? I mean, I might have my perception change and understand him and look on him with tenderness. But I can still cross the street. Like, don't get me wrong. Okay? Like I say, we're not expecting the other to change. Right? Alrighty then. This is a big section. Sorry. So, those you do not forgive you fear, and no one reaches love with fear beside him. Paragraph 12. This brother who stands beside you still seems to be a stranger. You do not know him, and your interpretation of him is very fearful. And you attack him still, to keep what seems to be yourself unharmed. Yet in his hands is your salvation. You see his madness, which you hate, because you share it. And all the pity and forgiveness that would heal it gives way to fear. Brother, you need forgiveness of your brother, for you will share in madness or in heaven together. And you and he will raise your eyes in faith together, or not at all. Right? So our interpretation of the other has to change. And all we need to do is be willing to have that interpretation corrected. You don't have to know what the correction looks like. All right? That's a trap. You know? And that's the process. And you and he will raise your eyes in faith together, or not at all. 13. Beside you is one who offers you the choice of atonement, for the Holy Spirit is in him. Would you hold his sins against him, or accept his gift to you? Is this giver of salvation your friend or enemy? Choose which he is. Remember that you will receive of him according to your choice. He has in him the power to forgive your sin, as you for him. Neither can give it to himself alone. And yet your Savior stands beside each one. Let him be what he is, and seek not to make of love an enemy. Okay? So he says, look, choose. Is he guilty or innocent? Put it that way. All right? If he's guilty, he's your enemy. All right? If he's innocent, in a spiritual sense, you can see his innocence. All right? Which doesn't mean you have to allow him to hit you on the head with a pipe or something. All right? But you can understand it. You're willing to see. You're willing to have your interpretation of him corrected. All right? He says, so choose, remembering that you're gonna receive according to your choice. If he's guilty, you're guilty. If you're willing to see the innocence, you're willing to accept your own. You'll become aware of your own. And like I say, no one's asking you to, do silly things, to walk into the lion's den or anything like that. All right? You can have your perception of your brother changed, like I say, as you're crossing the street, all right? As you're running away, all right? As you're leaving. So we can always have our perception of the other changed. All right? Because if we're constantly deeming them guilty, then we're putting that on ourselves. You're guilty too. All right? And he says, and neither of you can give it to yourselves alone. All right? Let him be what he is. And seek not to make of love an enemy. All right. Let him be what he is. Okay? Because past the costume, past the act, all right, he or she is a thought in the mind of God. A wonderful, innocent thought in the mind of God. Connected to you. Okay. And then, when we are willing to see the innocence, he says, behold your friend in paragraph 14. Behold your friend, with a capital F, the Christ who stands beside you. How holy and how beautiful he is. You thought he sinned because you cast the veil of sin upon him to hide his loveliness. Yet still, he holds forgiveness out to you to share his holiness. This enemy, this stranger, still offers you salvation as his friend. The enemies of Christ, the worshippers of sin, know not whom they attack. Right? When we believe in separation, we are the worshippers of sin. And we don't know whom we attack. We're projecting the guilt onto someone else. We don't know who we're attacking. We're attacking that innocence. We're attacking the face of Christ. All right? Cleverly disguised as a nut. All right? We just need to, we don't have to know what it looks like. We have to be willing to be shown the innocence. Right? And it will appear, it will come to you in a language you understand. Okay? So behold your friend, the Christ, all right, who stands beside you. All right? So look at paragraph 15. He says, this is your brother, crucified by sin and waiting for release from pain. Would you not offer him forgiveness when only he can offer it to you? For his redemption he will give you yours. And as surely as God created everything, every living thing, and loves it, and he will give it truly, for it will be both offered and received. There is no grace of heaven that you cannot offer your brother and receive from your most holy friend. Let him withhold it not, for by receiving it you offer it to him, and he will receive of you what you have received of him. Redemption has been given you to give your brother, and thus receive it. Whom you forgive is free, and what you give you share. Forgive the sins your brother thinks he has committed, and all the guilt you think you see in him. Okay? How many times in that paragraph is he telling us that the giving and receiving are simultaneous? All right? The giving and receiving are simultaneous, giving us the message that there is no separation. You are one. We just think we're seeing an individual out there separate from us. All right? And that's what the separation does. It separates and it judges, and right? And it starts to say, you're the guilty one, not me. He says, but that's your brother, and you're crucified by sins, right? By the guilt that I project onto him. All right? And he's waiting for the release from the pain. Says, would you not offer him forgiveness? Right? Would you not give it to him when only he could give it to you? We start the image of the giving and receiving. Because he says it again, for his redemption he will give you yours, as surely as God created every living thing and loves it. And he will give it truly, for it will be both offered and received. There is no grace of heaven that you cannot offer to your brother and receive from your most holy friend. All right? We give the grace and we receive it. He says it's impossible not to for that to happen. All right? And he will receive of you what you received of him. All right? Redemption has been given you to give your brother. All right? That memory of who you are. It's been given you to remind your brother. Right? And we don't do that by words, by proselytizing, by standing on the old soapboxes they used to say and preaching. And it first happens in the mind. We're willing to see the true nature of the other. Right? And then if we're given to act, we'll know what to do, or we'll know what to say. That's not the first plan. It's not to do or say something. The first thing is to have my perception corrected. I want to see my brother correctly. Right? And I will become aware of my own innocence, and I will be ready to face that final veil. And it can happen like that. He says you're given the choice all the time. Okay? He says, here is the holy place of resurrection, paragraph 16. Here's the holy place of resurrection, that place where you rise from the thought system of death. Okay? The poetry is wonderful. Here is the holy place of resurrection, to which we come again, to which we will return until redemption is accomplished and received. Think who your brother is before you would condemn him, and offer thanks to God that he is holy and has been given the gift of holiness for you. Join him in gladness and remove all trace of guilt from his disturbed and tortured mind. Help him to lift the heavy burden of sin you laid upon him, and he accepted as his own, and toss it lightly with happy laughter away from him. Press it not like thorns against his brow, nor nail him to it, unredeemed and hopeless. Okay? These are wonderful poetic pictures. Okay? And he reminds us that that moment of salvation is always present. He says, here is the holy place of resurrection, when I am willing to see the other correctly. Excuse me. That's the holy place of your resurrection, your rising from the thought system of death. Okay? And he says, and we return here, we come here again, to which we will return until redemption is accomplished and received. So you're going to keep doing it over and over until you finally get it. Okay? Like I said, we come to that point, we wander off. All right? We approach the edge of the ocean and we run away from the wave. All right? He says, and you do it again and again until you finally allow the wave to wash over you and realize that it's not going to kill you. You happily become one with the water, to put it like that. All right? And he says you return until redemption is accomplished and received. Your own redemption is received. You're not guilty. Think who your brother is. Think who he is before you would condemn him. All right? Ask to be shown. All right? And offer thanks to God that he is holy and has been given the gift of holiness for you. Join him in gladness and remove all trace of guilt from his disturbed and tortured mind. Okay? Lift that heavy burden of sin you laid upon him, and he accepted as his own, and toss it lightly with happy laughter away from him. All right. Toss it away. Don't press it like the crown of thorns. All right. Don't press it not like thorns against his brow, nor nail him to it, unredeemed and hopeless. Okay? I mean, there's many people in our lives, I mean, I'm speaking for myself, okay, that, I constantly, it's like they're the big one, I can't forgive them. Constantly projecting guilt onto them. They're despicable, they're crazy. And Jesus is telling me, look, you're joining in the craziness, all right? You don't have to know what it looks like, but you can be willing to be shown what the correct perception is. All right? And then you realize that the person you think is this and that really has a tortured mind, a disturbed and tortured mind. All right? And so do you until you accept the corrected perception. And they may continue with their disturbed and tortured stuff, but it just won't affect you. You will understand, all right? You will be able to look on them with compassion and with tenderness, all right? And if you need to do or say something, you'll be directed, that's all. Give faith to your brother. Right? Look at your brother with the right mind. Right? Give faith to your brother, for faith and hope and mercy are yours to give. Right? Think about that. Into the hands that give, the gift is given. Right? Giving and receiving once again. Look on your brother and see in him the gift of God you would receive. It is almost Easter, the time of resurrection. Let us give redemption to each other and share in it, that we may rise as one in resurrection, not separation in death. Behold the gift of freedom that I gave the Holy Spirit for you. And be you and your brother free together, as you offer the Holy Spirit the same gift. And giving it, receive it of him in return for what you gave. All right? He leadeth you and me together, that we might meet here in this holy place and make the same decision. That we meet here in the holy place, the mind, and make that same decision, the decision to see truth, the decision to see the innocence. Right? I'm willing to see it. I'm willing to be shown. Okay? He keeps repeating it. So when he says it's almost Easter, the time of resurrection, remember, this process was going on for 7 years, where Helen would hear the inner voice and write it down, and she would come the next day to work, and Bill Thetford and her would sit, and she would write in her shorthand, all right, and then they would write it out, type it out. Okay? And so at this point he's talking to them, we're talking to Helen, and he says, look, it's almost Easter time, the symbol of resurrection. Right? The time of resurrection. He goes, let us give redemption to each other. Let us give the resurrection to each other. The resurrection from this thought system of death. Right? The resurrection from this nutty world. Let us give redemption to each other, that we may rise as one in resurrection, not separate in death. All right? And behold the gift of freedom. I gave the Holy Spirit for you, the memory that we took with us. All right? Paragraph 18. Free your brother here as I freed you. Right? Now, Jesus didn't free us through the act of the crucifixion. He'll tell you that. That wasn't it. I was just trying to show you that the body really wasn't where it's at. All right? Jesus is the part of our mind that looked at the tiny mad idea and laughed at it and said, no, I don't think so. And went back to the oneness. All right? That's the gift. All right? That he chose against the ego. All right? He looked at it for a second and said, no, I don't want that. Okay? So free your brother here as I freed you. All right? Give him the self-same gift, nor look upon him with condemnation of any kind. See him as guiltless as I look on you, and overlook the sins he thinks he sees within himself. Offer your brother freedom and complete release from sin, here in the garden of seeming agony and death. So will we prepare together the way unto the resurrection of God's Son, and let him rise again to glad remembrance of his Father, who knows no sin, no death, but only life eternal. Okay? So it goes, offer your brother freedom. All right? Be willing to see them correctly. All right? Here in this world, the seeming garden of agony and death. All right? And we will prepare the way unto the resurrection. All right? 19. Together we will disappear into the presence beyond the veil, not to be lost, but found, not to be seen, but known. And knowing nothing in the plan of God is established for salvation will be left undone. Right? And knowing nothing in the plan God has established for salvation will be left undone. Right? So when we're known and we know, then there's nothing left undone in God's plan. Where we woke up, we realized we're home. This is the journey's purpose, without which is the journey meaningless. Right? If this is not our desire, our goal, the journey is meaningless. So we keep repeating it over and over again. Right? You'll keep pushing a rock up the hill until it dawns on you, oh, there must be a better way. Help me to see. All right? Here is the peace of God, given to you eternally by him. Here is the rest and quiet that you seek, the reason for the journey from its beginning. Heaven is the gift you owe your brother, the debt of gratitude you offer to the Son of God, in thanks for what he is and what his Father created him to be. We'll continue. 20. Think carefully how you would look upon the giver of this gift. For as you look on him, so will the gift itself appear to be. As he is seen as either the giver of guilt or of salvation, so will his offering be seen and so received. The crucified give pain because they're in pain. But the redeemed give joy because they have been healed of pain. Everyone gives as he receives, but he must choose what it will be that he receives. And he will recognize his choice by what he gives and what is given him. Nor is it given anything in hell or heaven to interfere with his decision. All right? The decision is yours. Nothing's going to interfere with it. And he keeps repeating that same theme. All right? Everyone gives as he receives. But he must choose what it will be that he receives. Do you want to receive guilt? Then you give guilt. All right? You want to receive the peace, the innocence? Then you give it. All right? And you will recognize the choice by what the other gives to us and what is given him. All right? What is given him, what we receive. Okay? And he says, nor is it given anything in hell or heaven to interfere with the decision. The choice is yours. What is it you want? Okay? All right. Paragraph 21. You came this far because the journey was your choice. Right? We said this in the beginning of the session. You came this far because the journey was your choice on some deep level, even if you're not aware of it. If you're listening to this, if you're going to pray, you're going to meditate, you're going to listen to spiritual teachers, you're there because that's the choice you made. You want. Right? You came this far to remove the obstacles to peace. Right? You came this far because it was your choice. And no one undertakes to do what he believes is meaningless. Right? What you had faith in still is faithful. And it watches over you in faith, so gentle yet so strong that it would lift you far beyond the veil and place the Son of God safely within the sure protection of his Father. Here is the holy purpose that gives this world, all right, and the long journey through this world, whatever meaning lies in them. Beyond this, they're meaningless. You and your brother stand together, still without conviction that they have a purpose. Yet it is given you to see this purpose in your holy friend and recognize it as your own. All right? You came this far because the journey was your choice. All right? And no one undertakes to do what he thinks is meaningless. Right? So you didn't undertake this journey because you thought it was meaningless. You wouldn't do it. Right? What you had faith in is still faithful. And what you had faith in still watches over you, even when we stray. There's still, as Dr. Wapnick would say, the golden thread that guides us to our final goal. All right. So what you had faith in is still faithful, and it watches over you in faith, so gentle and strong, that it would lift you far beyond the veil and place you safely within the sure protection of the Father. Right. Here is the only purpose that gives this world. Here is the only purpose that gives this world and the long journey through this world, whatever meaning lies in them. Right. Beyond this, they're meaningless. Okay. So our journey to peace, our choice to take the journey toward peace, says that's the only thing that gives this world any meaning. All right? So that we can use this world to help us get to the memory of peace, the memory of who we are. All right? You and your brother stand together. Still without conviction, they have a purpose. Yet it is given you to see the purpose in your holy friend and recognize it as your own. Right? So he's telling us, I know you still have these moments when you're projecting guilt. All right? He says, but it's given you, right? It's there in your mind, all right, to see the other correctly, all right, and recognize this is your purpose. Okay, this was a little bit longer session. Okay. It's a beautiful section, actually. It reminds us that the choice is always there ahead of us, and we can see what we chose by what we're experiencing. If I'm experiencing guilt and anger and fear, right? Oh, and I really hate that guy, and I'm afraid of what he's going to do if he gets in power. All right? Which is a prevalent thought these days. This is 2021, in case anybody wants to know. All right? There's a lot of fear in the air. All right? And constantly, where the choice becomes available to us. Help me to see correct. I'm willing. I'm truly willing to lay down my projections and let the truth arise. I'm willing to be shown the truth in the other. Right? And that choice is there every moment. All right? Alrighty then. I'm a serial talker. Stop me before I talk again. Okay. All right. You were only waiting for this moment to arrive, as the song goes. Beautiful song. See you next time.